2nd district. Here he goes, crossing himself. Oh! He's done.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Hot Program. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast. And as always, I am in and I am joined by a man who does not believe that cleanliness is next to godliness, but a clean car will help him get a little bit closer to his future wife. A man who needs no introduction. How you doing today, my one black friend?
Thank you, Pocket Locker. I'm fantastic. How are you?
Good. Holy Ship's here. Carrie Ann Chrysler's here. Good to see y'all, gang.
Hello, everyone.
Oh man, what a week it has been, and there's kind of like the first episode we did, where I don't know, there was some drama that week, right? And then all of a sudden we didn't have to think about what to do the show about because it was like obvious. It was like, oh, this is the thing everybody's talking about.
Yeah, well, we're Americans. There's always drama of some kind.
Yeah, so. God, what the hell? I'm trying to remember.
I don't remember.
I'm trying to remember like what was going on that week. God, I'd love to go back and look. All right, so this week there's drama that's obvious, and so I don't know if you heard, but let me get this right.
I probably have not heard. I've been looking for parts for my truck a lot this week. Well, a part for my truck a lot this week. Of course, car shopping and stuff like that. So I've been out of the loop, it's fair to say.
Hang on, I gotta go see if I can find what our first episode was about.
Was it origin stories? Maybe no.
It was. Oh, maybe we
in
did
parts.
A video or something. Yes, it was Dr. Price. It was the week of Dr. Price a year ago. And Dr. Price controversy and Will Smith slapped Chris Rock. That was, and it was a video. Like we recorded it, and then we've been doing lives since. All right, so I don't know if you heard this, but Ayaan Hirsi Ali has decided she is now a Christian.
Well, if she wasn't rich before, she can get rich now. Miss Ali, follow these instructions. You should write a book, do a speaking tour, and the book is about your conversion and how the power of Christ has compelled, not Dr. Price, the power of Christ. The power of Christ has compelled you to become a Christian. And you realize, though the differences between Muslim and Christians may be many, they do celebrate the same God, just in a different way.
Well, I think that plan
much like we atheists still celebrate Christmas, it's just more about friends and family than it is about Jesus.
I think that plan's in motion.
Yeah, so write that book.
Plan is in action. Do you know who? Are you familiar with her?
I'm not familiar with her opinions. I know she's some sort of political representative, and she was Muslim and took some flack from some of her Christian colleagues, if you will.
So she was a Muslim, but we know her as an atheist advocate. She was a Muslim, then became outspoken.
Lady. Yeah. No, I'm completely wrong. I'm thinking of someone else.
Oh,
I'm thinking of someone else entirely. Yeah. I'm thinking of that.
See, people recognize the face, but they don't know the name as much.
No,
but she did the famous. She's done. Probably seen her debates, right?
I've seen her do some sort of panel discussion Okay, well, good for her. Same advice applies. Yeah, write that book. Go on tours. Tell them how you were wrong. Make it very celebrated, and they will lay millions at your feet. So congratulations. You can get a better house if you don't like the house you have now.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and see how this pops up. Lord, I'm trying to do this. I'm gonna try. We're gonna go ahead and read this, and then we got a video to respond because actually I want people to hear what she has to say. Oh God, I hate this view. I want people to hear what she has to say about her conversion,
Conversion.
but then we're going to shift into how it's being reacted to. And my thing is, when you do your little Olympic dive, you do your little sweet performance, and you hear the roar of the crowd and you hear all the applause, you need to look around and see who's clapping for you. And I think that's sort of my point here. Is I think she's being celebrated by some pretty screwed up people, and that to me tells you that this is problematic. But let's go ahead and let me see if I could get this to I'm in the wrong window. I'm gonna try to get this to a decent size so people can see what's on the screen. Oh yeah, we're going real big.
Well, now I know how her name is spelled. That's good.
I didn't. So the question of the day is if people in the chat knew who she was before this whole thing. I definitely knew who she was, but couldn't spell the name correctly. All right, so here we go. Let's read this. In 2002, I discovered a 1927 lecture by Bertrand Russell entitled "Why I Am Not a Christian." It did not cross my mind as I read it that one day, nearly a century after he delivered it to the South London branch of the National Secular Society, I would be compelled to write an essay with precisely the opposite title. The year before, I had publicly condemned the terrorist attack of the 19 men who had hijacked passenger jets and crashed them into the Twin Towers in New York. They had done it in the name of my religion, Islam. I was a Muslim then, although not a practicing one. If I truly condemned their actions, then where did that leave me? The underlying principle that justified the attacks was religious. After all, the idea of jihad or holy war against the infidels. Was it possible for me, as for many members of the Muslim community, simply to distance myself from the action and its horrific results? At the time, there were many eminent leaders in the West, politicians, scholars, journalists, and other experts who insisted that the terrorists were motivated by reasons other than the ones they and their leader, Osama bin Laden, had articulated so clearly. So Islam had an alibi. This excuse making was not only condescending towards Muslims, it also gave many Westerners a chance to retreat into denial. Blaming the errors of US foreign policy was easier than contemplating the possibility that we were confronted with a religious war. We have seen a similar tendency in the past few weeks as millions of people sympathetic to the plight of Gazans seek to rationalize the October 7 terrorist attacks as a justified response to the policies of the Israeli government. When I read Russell's lecture, I found my cognitive dissonance easing. It was a relief to adopt an attitude of skepticism toward religious doctrine, discard my faith in God, and declare that no such entity existed. Best of all, I could reject the existence of hell and the danger of everlasting punishment. Russell's assertion that religion is based primarily on fear resonated with me. I had lived for too long in terror of all the gruesome punishments that awaited me. While I had abandoned all the rational reasons for believing in God, the irrational fear of hellfire still lingered. Russell's conclusion thus came as something of a relief. When I die, I shall rot. To understand why I became an atheist 20 years ago, you first need to understand the kind of Muslim I had been. I was a teenager when the Muslim Brotherhood penetrated my community in Nairobi, Kenya in 1985. I don't think I had even understood religious practice before the coming of the Brotherhood. I had endured the rituals of ablutions, prayers, and fasting as tedious and pointless. The preachers of the Muslim Brotherhood changed this. They articulated a direction, a straight path, a purpose to work towards admission into Allah's paradise after death, a method, the Prophet's instruction manual of do's and don'ts, the halal and the haram. As a detailed supplement to the Quran, the Hadith spelled out how to put into practice the difference between right and wrong, good and evil, God and the devil. The Brotherhood preachers left nothing to the imagination. They gave us a choice. Strive to live by the Prophet's manual and reap the glorious rewards in the hereafter. On this earth, meanwhile, the greatest achievement possible was to die as a martyr for the sake of Allah. The alternative, indulging in the pleasures of the world, was to earn Allah's wrath and be condemned to an eternal life in hellfire. Some of the, quote, worldly pleasures they were decrying, including reading novels, listening to music, dancing, and going to the cinema, all of which I was ashamed to admit that I adored. The most striking quality of the Muslim Brotherhood was their ability to transform me and my fellow teenagers from passive believers into activists almost overnight. We didn't just say things or pray for things, we did things. As girls, we donned the burqa and swore off Western fashion and makeup. The boys cultivated their facial hair to the greatest extent possible. They wore the white dress like twab worn in Arab countries, or had their trousers shortened above their ankle bones. We operated in groups and volunteered our services in charity to the poor, the old, the disabled, and the weak. We urged fellow Muslims to pray and demanded that non-Muslims convert to Islam. During Islamic study sessions, we shared with the preacher in charge of the session our worries. For instance, what should we do about the friends we loved and felt loyal to, but who refused to accept our dawah, invitation to the faith? In response, we were reminded repeatedly about the clarity of the Prophet's instructions. We were told in no uncertain terms that we could not be loyal to Allah and Muhammad while also maintaining friendships and loyalty towards the unbelievers. If they explicitly rejected our summons to Islam, we were to hate and curse them. Here, special hatred was reserved for one subset of unbeliever, the Jew. We cursed the Jews multiple times a day and expressed horror, disgust, and anger at the litany of offenses he had allegedly committed. The Jew had betrayed our prophet. He had occupied the holy mosque in Jerusalem. He continued to spread corruption of the heart, mind, and soul. You can see why, to someone who had been through such a religious schooling, atheism seemed so appealing. Bertrand Russell offered a simple, zero-cost escape from an unbearable life of self-denial and harassment of other people. For him, there was no credible case for the existence of God. Religion, Russell agreed, was rooted in fear. Fear is the basis of the whole thing. Fear of the mysterious, fear of defeat, fear of death. As an atheist, I thought I would lose that fear. I also found an entirely new circle of friends, as different from the preachers of the Muslim Brotherhood as one could imagine. The more time I spent with them, people such as Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins, the more confident I felt that I had made the right choice. For the atheists were clever, they were also a great deal of fun. So what changed? Go ahead. Oh,
No,
that the
I
atheists are
think
good. That the
I think
atheists are
atheists are more
fun.
fun typically. Well, I've been, my fiance, as many of you know, is Christian, and I don't know why. I don't think I mentioned this on the show. So, uh, two doors down, my neighbor John is a minister, and he has a nearby church. And I asked him, like, "Hey, John, what do you charge to do a ceremony?" My fiance is standing right there. He goes, "I don't charge anything. I don't make any money off the church." I won't say what his career was, but he made plenty of money. He goes, "So I do it for free. You can get married at the church for free, and I'll do the ceremony for free if you want." And I was like, "That's great." He goes, this guy, I don't even think he believes in God. I go, I don't. He goes, see, I've been trying to get her to go to church. And I'm standing there laughing, and my fiance's got a big smile, and he's got a big smile. So there are those moments where our differences we can still enjoy our differences. But had my neighbor been an atheist and that was just his company, like he had like a reception hall or something like that, it probably would have been just as much fun of a conversation, a little bit less interesting.
Right.
But I think atheists tend to be, for me, it's easier to have fun because the topics are wide open. But with religious people, I don't really feel that topics are wide open. I sort of let them dictate where the boundaries are.
No, I mean,
Because I respect that.
So there's a lot of, I think of it as like fake joy in a lot of religious traditions. I actually don't believe religious people are as happy as they pretend to be. I think they've got to sort of name it and claim it. But one of the things I reflected on, even in my own family, especially with like my grandparents, because they're definitely the most religious of the clan, never really had fun. Like looking back, and I'm not saying they didn't enjoy certain things. My grandfather can sit down and enjoy a Western or enjoy a football game, and we had great meals and stuff like that. But we never like did fun things. We never like went fun places.
Never went to the zoo or amusement parks or stuff like that.
Nah, not really. I mean, I did that stuff with like my mom, other members of my family, but no, they never really participated in stuff. No games. That was the one that really stuck out to me. Like I've never seen them play a game. My mom said she got them to play a game of dominoes or something. I was like shocked. I was like, oh my goodness. But yeah, I do think that religion robs people of a lot of fun. Let's go ahead and finish this essay she's got here. All right, so here we go. Now we're getting to the heart of it. So what changed? Why do I call myself a Christian now? Part of the answer is global. Western civilization is under threat from 3 different but related forces: the resurgence of the great power, authoritarianism, and expansionism in the forms of the Chinese Communist Party and Vladimir Putin's Russia, the rise of global Islamism, which threatens to mobilize a vast population against the West, and the viral spread of woke ideology, which is eating into the moral fiber of the next generation. We endeavor to fend off these threats with modern and secular tools: military, economic, diplomatic, and technological efforts to defeat, bribe, persuade, appease, or surveil. And yet, with every round of conflict, we find ourselves losing ground. We are either running out of money with our national debt in the tens of trillions of dollars, or we are losing our lead in the technological race with China. But we can't fight off these formidable forces unless we can answer the question, what is it that unites us? The response that, quote, God is dead seems insufficient. So too does the attempt to find solace in, quote, the rules-based liberal international order. The only credible answer, I believe, lies in our desire to uphold the legacy of the Judeo-Christian tradition.
Stop it right there. Can you scroll up just a little? The what is it that unites us part.
Yeah, here.
Please. What is it that unites us? Please put your thoughts in the chat. I have it open on my computer, so I'm hoping I can see some of it better than I usually do. Let's think about that. What unites us is we tend to have common victories, common sufferings, common hopes, dreams, things we have to, as human beings, resolve, right? Problems, pollution of the air, water. Is there enough fresh water? What do we do about, do electric cars ultimately become as big of a polluter as a brand new gasoline car? Things like that. Those unite us. The fact that we have working minds and a lot of really great ideas. Don't expect engineers to solve every problem. They won't, but they solve a lot of them. We can unite around the common goal of advancing the human race forward. We can unite around the common goal of not only being technologically advanced, but socially advanced as well. Um, let's do away with the hatred of people because of their skin color, their nationality, their religion, their you name it, right? Their preferences. Those things, those hatreds have held the human race back again and again, and we should be far ahead of where we are now. Those things can unite us. But I was in conversation with a Christian who said something about, oh, the globalist agenda. I said, but that's you. Christianity is a globalist agenda.
Yep.
Jesus is supposed to be the king of all kings. That's what you're telling me. You want your guy for president of the world. Excuse me, universe.
Right.
So what does Jesus do? If we look in Revelation, he's a tyrant. He sends people to kill a third of all the human beings on the planet. Really? This is who you want to worship. This is who you want in charge. This is the author of your life. Really? So when people say things like this, I worry because I really feel like she didn't read the instructions. Like, wait,
No, she
just
didn't
like
read the
right,
handbook. Yeah.
just like a lot of Christians, if I told them straight up that if I showed them in Revelation in support of what I just said, right, where Jesus is gonna have a third of humanity killed, they'd have a problem. No, wait a second, not my Jesus. And I can never stop loving that kind of Christian who says no, not my Jesus, because they would, like Lot, they would petition with God or Jesus saying, wait, you can't do that. So for the sake of 1,000 people, will you not wipe out all of humanity? 1,000 righteous non-Christians, would you do it? You know, all the way down for the sake of one, would you not do it? And so I think there's a real problem here when someone converts, whatever religion or non-religion, and they think that this is the absolute only way. I know you and I disagree. I think we agree that religion ultimately, kind of for humanity in total, I don't think it's what we need. You think it should be done away with. If I'm correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh yeah, no,
Okay,
definitely,
but
yeah.
I can see where religions have helped individuals, and therefore I applaud it for that. But look, my fiance is using my shop vac. She's never used one before. She uses a regular vacuum cleaner, but not a shop vac. You know what that shop vac is? It can suck up water, it can suck up dirt, so you can clean your car, you can clean your construction site, you can clean your home with it. But one thing you can't do with it is fly to the moon. It's not made for that. That's not its purpose. And so I think what happens is a lot of people, they convert and then they think what other people have doesn't work for them. Everybody needs to be on our program. Like, Clip, this is not a Mickey Mouse program. I think that's where they go with it. It's not good for everything. It's not the panacea that solves all the problems or that is the cure all. It's not that.
Yeah, and
It's wonderful if it works for Miss Ali or Mrs. Ali. I don't know. It's wonderful if it works for her. It's wonderful if it works for my mom, but it didn't work for me because I read the book. I'm like, I can't get on board with a murderous God who has people kill their own children and then kills his own kid. So I guess it's okay in his eyes. Look, I did it for myself. I told you, practice what I preach.
yeah, I think
Anyway,
I
go
think
ahead.
I think they people are not getting our honest feedback about this belief system. But I think this whole what is it that unites us? I think that's a trick question. I think there's sort of the mundane sense of it and like what brings people together or builds our bonds and there religion offers nothing unique because to the extent that it's the community, it's the food, it's the traditions, it's the celebrating the holidays, it's the, those are all things you just get as being part of a social species. That's just kind of how it is. But then in the bigger picture, I think we're not united. And
we're not united the way we kind of hope we are. Where we are united is we're here and we have to deal with the world.
Yeah.
That there we are united. Now there are a lot of other details that fall underneath that pocket locker that make people go in separate directions, right? Where they are not united, where there's strife, where there's war, where there's anger, where there's extreme kindness. But we're here. We are sharing the human experience for now. I may not be here in 75 years. I'll most likely be dead because I'm already 51. But since I'm part computer and stuff like that, who knows? I'm eating vegetables now. It's difficult to say, right? We don't really know. But the fact is, now since we are all here, we can do something, and we can choose to do something together. We can gather ourselves together and go in a particular direction. I don't think religion is the way, because clearly religion doesn't unite us. Look, even within the space of religion, let's just take the Hebrew religion. They were actively told, the Hebrews were actively told, hey, you got to stop worshiping these other gods. Yahweh is the chief God. Don't make graven images because we don't want you to worship them. Don't make anything of a graven image of anything in a fish in the sea, something in heaven or under heaven. You're not supposed to do it. And yet now in Christianity, which is derived from Judaism, the Hebrew religion, let's just say that it's not strictly just Judaism. They were Hebrews before. There were 12 tribes, and those groups are known as the Hebrews. In the Hebrew religion, they didn't really accept other faiths. If a town tried to get you to worship their God, you're supposed to put the whole town to death. They're not playing around. When you look at their rule book, they're not screwing around at all. Well, Christians came along and they wanted to be able to, it's written that they could eat any food. Now, some of the prohibitions on food have been lifted. Well, that's great. Now you can have a ham sandwich. You don't have to stick with turkey bacon if you're in the 1st century and you're a Jewish person under Christianity. You can eat anything you like for the most part. So that's great. That's progression, but that's a different rule. They're changing it. It's division. You don't have to get circumcised. Oh, wait, that's a different rule. It was fundamental if you were a male that you'd be circumcised.
Yeah, even as an adult.
So if you converted, you had to be circumcised. It's just how it was. But somebody keeps making exceptions to make this religion more palatable to other people, even until this day. Like we've done it on our show where we've covered Christians that are upset with other Christians because of the way they practice their faith. And Christianity is a religion that does tell its adherents to hold its other adherents accountable. I can't imagine Islam isn't the same way, that Buddhism isn't the same way, and you go round and round. I can't imagine that the desire for the community to be the best community it can by having its adherents be the best people they can and sort of stick to the rules that are in place, right? The rules of the religion were designed or agreed upon, if you will, for the propagation of the religion, the prosperity of the religion, and we could hope the betterment of the human experience. But when you start saying this group over here is bad, this group over here is bad, you're sort of undoing some of your work just because they're different, just because they have a different name for their God, they have a different take on it. I'm rather impressed with the Hindu things I've learned about Hindu religion. But at the same time, I can't teach a class on it. I could on Christianity. I could on Judaism, but I can't on Hinduism. And they have lots of gods. You know, there's
Sure,
probably
sure.
a god for, I don't know, the patron saint of the Hindu patron saint of whatever you can think of. Space travel. There's probably one already, and there was probably there thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago. Who knows?
All right, let's keep going through this so we can we still got a lot to get through. But yeah. Hey Sumami. All right. So the legacy consists of elaborate set of ideas. She's talking about Christianity as the foundation of Western society, I guess. The legacy consists of a elaborate set of ideas and institutions designed to safeguard human life, freedom, and dignity, from the nation state and the rule of law to the institutions of science, health, and learning. As Tom Holland has shown in his marvelous book Dominion, all sorts of apparently secular freedoms of the market, of conscience, and of the press find their roots in Christianity. And so I've come to realize what Russell and my atheist friends fail to see: the woods for the trees. The wood is the civilization built on Judeo Christian tradition. It is the story of the West, warts and all. Russell's critique of those contradictions in Christian doctrine is serious, but it is also too narrow in scope. For instance, he gave his lecture in a room full of former or at least doubting Christians in a Christian country. Think about how unique that was nearly a century ago, and how rare it still is in non-Western civilizations. Could a Muslim philosopher stand before any audience in a Muslim country then or now and deliver a lecture with the title "Why I'm Not a Muslim"? In fact, a book with that title exists, written by an ex-Muslim, but the author published it in America under the pseudonym Ibn Warraq. It would have been too dangerous to do otherwise. To me, this freedom of conscience and speech is perhaps the greatest benefit of Western civilization. It does not come naturally to man. It is the product of centuries of debate within Jewish and Christian communities. It was these debates that advanced science and reason, diminished cruelty, suppressed superstitions, and built institutions to order and protect life, while guaranteeing freedom to as many people as possible. Unlike Islam, Christianity outgrew its dogmatic stage. It became increasingly clear that Christ's teaching implied not only a circumscribed role for religion as something separate from politics, it also implied compassion for the sinner and humility for the believer. Yet I would not be truthful if I attributed my embrace of Christianity solely to the realization that atheism is too weak and divisive a doctrine to fortify us against our menacing foes.
Pause it. Yet I would not be truthful if I attributed my embrace of Christianity solely to the realization that atheism is too weak and divisive a doctrine to fortify us against our menacing foes. Okay. One of the big problems that we have in this world is creating enemies from strangers. So people we don't know, people who have no angst against us, no problem with us, they are now a foe. And once you have an enemy, you're taught to mobilize your resources, be ready to defend yourself against most people who you would probably have a wonderful time with if you all sat down at the same party, right? That person's your foe now. This is one of the things I've never liked about religions is creating an enemy out of another group of people, most of which who would never harm you. It's not thinkable to them. But we see it. Christianity in the United States of America, whether there is a God or not, is now politicized, right? There are those Christian dominionists who want this to be a Christian nation. I often I have pretty much it's like on YouTube speed dial for me, the book of Revelation. I listen to it. I listen to it a lot because I'm trying to pick up on things. So when I have a conversation with a Christian, I can sort of put these questions to them about that book, about the world. You know, how does this relate to modern times? Because it clearly wasn't written for modern times. In my assessment, it was not. Um, you know, these guys with Jesus are riding around on horses. I mean, can't you go weeks without seeing a person on a horse in your community? You know, that isn't a policeman or a Canadian Mountie or something like that. Um, the idea that entire groups of people just should be threatened by your presence, right? By your ideology is astonishing to me. Christians will say your enemy is not of flesh and blood. It's Satan, right? Because Satan's real busy making human beings utter screw ups. When you know people just make mistakes, and sometimes they're awful mistakes, and sometimes people do awful things that to them seem justified, but to the rest of us, what a horrible mistake, right? We have these school shooters in the United States of America. This is awful. This is completely unnecessary behavior, and yet we see it every month. We see it.
Yeah. All right.
So the fact that she's, I don't know, I'm sort of circling back now, but I find this appalling. She's a smart lady. Um, I in atheism, there isn't a doctrine. Nobody ever created one, as far as I know. And if they did, I would know if it applied to me because I don't know about it. My atheism is rooted in one thing only. I don't believe there are gods. No one has presented me sufficient proof. That's all. If you got it, show me. And if it's
Yeah.
good, I'll be happy to show other people. Go ahead, man.
All right. So she says, I've also turned to Christianity. I'll start at the paragraph again. Yet I would not be truthful if I attributed my embrace of Christianity solely to the realization that atheism is too weak and divisive a doctrine to fortify us against our menacing foes. I've also turned to Christianity because I ultimately found life without any spiritual solace unendurable, indeed, very nearly self-destructive. Atheism failed to answer a simple question: what is the meaning and purpose of life? Russell,
Okay,
another
wait. Can you scroll back up? All right. So I went to high school, and one of the things we learned in high school is when you're listening to an argument, we had to do debates like a little bit. When you're listening to an argument, it might be good to be able to restate that argument accurately. But sometimes what you want to do to show the weakness of an argument is change a few things in the argument. So let me rephrase it. Yet I would not be truthful if I attributed my embrace of atheism solely to the realization that Christianity is too weak and divisive a doctrine to fortify us against our menacing foes. I have also turned to atheism because I ultimately found life without any spiritual solace. Let me say it, life with spiritual solace unendurable, indeed, very nearly self destructive. Christianity failed to answer a simple question: what is the purpose of life? Now, Christianity does talk about a purpose of life. You're supposed to, well, seek and save the lost. You're supposed to honor God in all that you do, right? Put God first. Okay, so that's it. What about a career? What about a family? Jesus said you're supposed to leave all that stuff behind and follow him. That's not what we see. That's not what we see. So there's the veneer that people place upon Christianity, right? It's the feeling it's supposed to get you, but it's not what it is. It's not what the book says it is.
Yep.
So I think Miss Ali is going to find that out. Like, wait a second. I bought the sizzle, not the steak. I'm living the sizzle, not the steak.
Exactly. That was actually a fantastic way to put it. Russell, another activist, atheist, believed that with the rejection of God, we would enter an age of reason and intelligent humanism, but the God hole, the void left by the retreat of the church, has merely been filled with a jumble of irrational quasi-religious dogma. The result is a world where modern cults prey on the dislocated masses, offering them spurious reasons for being in action, mostly by engaging in virtue signaling theater on behalf of a victimized minority or our supposedly doomed planet.
And
The line,
Christianity does exactly that.
yeah, the
It does
line,
exactly. I mean, it's a thick book. It does that over and over again.
yep.
Go ahead.
The line often attributed to G.K. Chesterton has turned into a prophecy. When men choose not to believe in God, they do not thereafter believe in nothing. They become capable of believing in anything. And
Talking donkeys, a talking bush, a talking snake, a flood that wiped out all but 8 people on the whole planet, which we have no geological evidence for, right? A guy walking on water, people
right.
being able to say a few words as a group, in a group, right? And mysteriously heal people. This is the Christianity. This is the Hebrew religion. These are the stories of that religion. Am I to look at that, right? Things in the Bible I know aren't true and
Yep.
believe them, right? So as Pocket Locker has once said, now say that in a mirror, Miss
Yeah.
Ali.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
say that in a
Exactly.
mirror.
Exactly. That's
It's
the
just it's
audience he
just
needs to hear it.
it's just sad. So here's where I will defend atheism. Atheism doesn't hold you to any of that. We just look, you've presented me with some evidence. I don't think it's good enough to justify me believing in it. You go ahead and have a wonderful day. Be sweet, be kind, be generous, be thoughtful, be out of yourself to help the poor, the disadvantaged, visit the sick, visit people in prison, maybe help them out when you can in any way you can, maybe job training and help them find a career that will be fulfilling to them. Do those things. Those are lovely goals. Those are admirable goals. But my atheism doesn't prevent me from doing those same things. It is
Yeah,
neither requirement
precisely.
nor no one's going to shout me down. No other atheist is going to look at me and say, "You're a fool for doing those things." I'm as generous as I can afford to be, have been most of my life. No one shouted me down for that. I don't believe in a God, anybody's God, and it's okay. So anyway, go on. Maybe we need to write Miss Ali a note.
In this nihilistic vacuum, the challenge before us becomes civilizational. We can't withstand China, Russia, and Iran if we can't explain to our populations why it matters that we do so. We can't fight woke ideology if we can't defend the civilization that it is determined to destroy. And we can't
In what
counter
way?
Islamism with purely secular tools. To win the hearts and minds of Muslims here in the West, we have to offer them something more than videos on TikTok. The lesson I learned from my years with the Muslim Brotherhood was the power of a unifying story embedded in the foundational text of Islam to attract, engage, and mobilize the Muslim masses. Unless we offer something as meaningful, I fear the erosion of our civilization will continue. Unfortunately, there is no need to look for some new age concoction of medication and mindfulness. Christianity has it all. That is why I no longer consider myself a Muslim apostate, but a lapsed atheist. Of course, I still have a great deal to learn about Christianity.
Yeah,
I
she'll be back.
I discover a little more at church each Sunday, but I've recognized in my own long journey through a wilderness of fear and self-doubt that there is a better way to manage the challenges of existence than either Islam or unbelief had to offer.
Miss Ali, when you realize you were just telling yourself a story to give yourself comfort, to convince yourself that maybe your life wasn't all you wanted it to be, and that Christianity held all of the solutions. When you find your communion cup empty and the promises of Christianity just as empty, the sweet, loving arms of atheism will be there to embrace you once again when you return to us. So, as we say when backing up a trailer, come on back, come on back, come on back.
So, I mean, there was a bunch of things that jumped out to me. First off, she's just totally in the camp of the right wing talking points. She actually works
Yes,
at a she
yes.
works at a conservative think tank now, the Hoover Institute, I think, at Stanford University. She's I think got some serious prejudices. First off, she really seems to want to convince us that China and Russia are amongst the imminent threats to the world, but she primarily focuses on wokeism and being anti-Islam, and the her hatred of Islam is profoundly personal to her, like mine is of Christianity. It's like it's interwoven in her life story, but she's making this mistake of finding an abusive partner that doesn't beat her up as badly as her last partner. I hear this a lot with people when they're talking about religion. They sort of make the comparison, oh well, I think Islam's worse, or I think Islam's more violent than Christianity. Ergo, let's give Christianity a pass for the day. One, I don't think Christianity is actually fundamentally any better than Islam. I think you see different historical and cultural context for the two religions, and I think that has a lot to do with the people and the politics of their societies than that there's something inherently more peaceful or something like that about Christianity. But yeah, the anti-woke thing is really problematic because she sort of bought into this thing, and it's amazing to come to this desire to clearly be accepted into the Christian fold as a woman of color who's a former Muslim, but then turn around and think that being aware of our marginalization of particular groups and being opposed to racism is like a bad thing. So she's really fallen quite far quite quickly, as far as I can tell. And none of that had anything to do with the actual faith of Christianity. And so we're going to jump into some of the responses, particularly this apologist David Wood. But it's really interesting because Christians are super excited about this. This is like great. It's a great but it's not. Nothing about what she said, and that was why I wanted to read what she actually said, because so people could see like none of what she actually said was, "Oh, I believe Jesus died for my sins and rose from the dead." It wasn't anything about the theology. It was literally just about like she's decided to pick a team in dodgeball or something and she's gone with the team that she thinks won't lose. But it's really weird. All right, so let's see what this fool's talking about.
Watching atheists wake up to reality is like watching a newborn baby open his eyes for the first time. The light is painful when all you've ever known is darkness.
Right, but right off the bat, like how vile is this man? And this is what I mean. You want to pay
this
attention
guy
to
tried to
his
kill his dad.
you.
This guy tried to kill his dad.
Oh, is that David Wood? Is that this dude?
This guy, yeah. That video he did, I was like, is this a funny or die video? Where he talks about he's like in the subway system in some city, and he's talking about him almost killing his dad and him becoming a Christian. And I'm listening to this going, wait, is it okay to laugh at any of this? Because it's horrifying, and his presentation of it was so serious.
Well,
But anyway,
he's still scared, and he's still got that that dangerous edge to him for
does he?
sure.
Hey,
Like,
dude, stay a Christian.
yeah,
Jesus is Lord. Hallelujah. You go ahead and you drink that communion wine and take an extra swig. On my part, I'll send you a bottle of
with
juice,
your
wine, whatever
scary
you want.
self.
Yeah. So here's the deal.
Hey,
When a
punk.
baby is born, probably the first person to see the baby's eyes open is the one who actually helps the baby come from the womb, right? From the vagina. So everybody else who gets to see the baby after that, the baby's already had their eyes open for the first time. You might look upon that baby and then it opens its eyes and you feel special or whatever. It's just looking, as far as that goes. But for Christians, pocket locker, this is for Christians like David Wood. This is a victory because they've inherited or they've earned another intelligent voice who can help communicate why everyone else is wrong and they are right.
Oh yeah.
And
That's exactly what this chess meeting is about.
and it may be, here's what they don't know. To me, a person like David Wood, who had his exceedingly violent tendencies, and then I'll give him his credit, overcame it. And this is my perspective. That's why religion can be great. But then when you start vilifying these other groups, right?
Yeah, and I'm
Atheists have
concerned
to
a
be
person like
bad.
David Wood eventually ends up radicalized enough that religion is more of something that can help justify his aggressive tendencies. But
That's in the Bible. It's already in there. Again, a lot of I think what type of Christian a person becomes depends on how much they read. Because we have people who become nuns and monks who selflessly dedicate their whole life, their whole lives to the faith. I don't know what the Islamic equivalent of a monk or a nun is, but they probably do have that as well. So it's these devotees that say, I don't want to do anything else with my life. Right? Those are serious people in what may be the
yeah,
best
right.
way
But you're right.
because
But they seem like they haven't read the book.
again, it depends on how far you go. My fiance is learning to drive right now. So she's going to get a permit. I'm going to use the sewing machine that she has to show her how to attenuate the accelerator pedal. So when I'm beside her and she's going to get a permit, I can say, okay, give me level 1 acceleration, which is you're barely pushing the pedal down, right? I'm going to demonstrate. She'll get the idea of pedal feel from her sewing machine. I'm teaching her. So she'll understand that pretty well before she ever drives 10 feet in the car. But what she won't understand is a how to use a roundabout or 4-way or 5-way stop.
Right.
She won't understand that from that. So she'll know that much, which might save her life one day. But if she doesn't know the rest, she'll get killed. Somebody's going to crash into her. She's going to crash into somebody. People are going to die. It'll be awful. So with Christianity, if you just want to be a nominal Christian and put on the jersey every Sunday and walk out there like, yeah, and cheer it on while you're sitting there eating your communion wafer and drinking your wine, but know next to nothing about the faith other than you are supposed to be good, whatever that means.
Yeah,
You could probably live a fairly happy life. But if Jesus showed up and said, what are you doing here?
Yeah, I think
What are
that's
all of you doing here?
most Christians.
Yeah, it's most Christians. Jesus wouldn't recognize his own religion. He just wouldn't. Not in America.
A protective womb that shields you from the outside world. But after a brief, painful transition, your eyes will eventually adjust. Ayaan Hirsi Ali is on an amazing journey. I read her books, The Caged Virgin and Infidel, many years ago. Following her apostasy from Islam, Ayaan has been closely associated with all of the main figures among the new atheists, but she's been going through some changes recently. If you listen to her, you'll hear her saying things like, God-given.
I think power is a given. It's like the law of gravity, and there's also powerlessness, and none of us want to be powerless. But there is God-given natural power.
Ayaan Hirsi Ali has God-given power. It helped her escape Islam, and now it's helping her escape the new atheism. This clip is from a recent panel
new
discussion with
atheism.
Jordan
Well.
Peterson, Oz Guinness, John Anderson, and of course Ayaan Hirsi Ali. They're discussing the significance of stories, big stories, stories about our place in the world. I watched it after Ruslan posted some of what Ayaan said. Ayaan is going through a transition that I've been seeing over and over and over again. People who, just a decade or so ago, were extremely hostile to Christianity or religion in general, are starting to warm up to some very religious concepts. Suddenly, they start talking about the transcendent, something beyond ourselves.
And it's very arrogant to assume that you can change human beings to fit into all sorts of modules. Therefore, you accept that there is a power transcendent above us.
Pause it.
A power
Pause it.
transcendent above.
Pause it, please. Can you go back to what she said about fitting human beings into modules? I know we're missing context here.
Something beyond ourselves.
And it's very arrogant to assume that you can change human beings to fit into all sorts of modules.
Pause it.
Therefore,
Pause it. Pause it. Pause it. We literally do this. We literally do this. I went to a university where they did this. I wanted to get a marketing degree. I could have got a teaching degree for something other than marketing. I could have got a degree in home economics. I could have got a degree in music, and so on and so on and so on. We literally do this. When someone is putting together the church choir, they realize that people can do different things with their different voices, different colors, different timbres. And so the choir may be grouped together to make small crowds of people with similar voices, your basses, your tenors, your sopranos, and things like that. We literally do this. So I realize we don't have all of her context. To be fair to her, we don't. But there are people who've read the Quran and become Muslim. And no doubt people who've read the Quran and says, maybe I should be something other than Muslim. There are people who've read the Bible, like myself, and said, I can't do this. I'm not a Christian. There's no way. A lot of this isn't even true. People simply either will do it themselves or pay someone to teach them, right? Or the training simply comes along. They choose a teacher. People are in the different modules. In her audience, there's probably a used car dealer and some employee at another used car dealership that doesn't own it, right? There's customers that buy used cars. There are teachers, doctors, attorneys, kids trying to stay out of trouble, somebody who's there to get credit for a class. The modules are already there. We have to acknowledge we are a world that has people with lots of differences. But we can break those differences down into pretty much any group you care to name, right? Be it their ethnicity, where they were born, right? I say I'm an American, but I'm from the United States of America. I'm not a Central American. I'm not a South American. But they may say in their conversations, they're Americans too. I can't disagree with that. It's true. They're just not from the same America that I am. And I can easily respect that they're different, right? Their location where they were
Yeah.
born is different than mine. So she's wrong here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Based
Big
on the
time.
context we have, I don't know what else, but I'm depending on David Wood, right? Based on his context, she's wrong. Please continue.
You accept that there is a power transcendent above us.
A power
I don't have to accept
transcendent
that.
above us?
A
Hold
power
on, hold on.
transcendent above us.
So
That
for
doesn't sound
me,
like
I'm an independent contractor. So for me, the power, the higher power is human resources because they can hire me. Right? It's not God, it's not Jesus, it's not Thor, it's not Thanos. For a lot of people, it's not the God that she's now selling to other people. It's not the God that she's trying to convince herself is real. And she may just believe in the fluffy God, right? That I refer to, which is the God that is all nice and kind and generous and wants the best for the world and stops hurricanes from forming and makes tornadoes skip over your house and take your neighbor's house out as well because they're unsavory for this or that reason. It's the fluffy God, not that wrathful, vengeful son of a gun in the Bible who can barely tolerate himself. He had to kill his own kid for crying out loud because he probably got tired of him asking him to forgive people. Who knows? Go on, Pocket
atheism.
Locker.
So, where are you getting this transcendent whatever above us?
And that idea that there is something above us, a higher power, I think that is rooted in Christianity, it's rooted in the Judeo-Christian traditions.
Okay, pause it
You're
before David
getting
Wood.
this transcendent
Ayaan,
higher power
okay, pause
from
it,
Christian.
please. So the God, when the Bible was written, the God that was above people, he wasn't out past Mars somewhere. He was in the clouds. He was up there in the weather system. I don't know whether he was in a cirrus cloud or some other kind of a stratus cloud. I don't know where he was, but he was up there in the clouds. We can learn from the Psalms. He's riding his cherubim through the clouds. He's not far and away. Now, I can't imagine that Miss Ali hasn't been on an airplane. And did she, like I did she look out the window? I wonder where heaven is. Does she do that now? Or is no, God has to be someplace that we can't see, right? The ancients didn't have the ability to sail into the skies. We do now. So is it just in my opinion, I think it's more excuse making. She can tell us, are you making excuses? Because that's where their God's supposed to be, and we don't see him.
Christianity, why would anyone go with something from Christianity instead of atheism?
And in many ways, it is superior to the nihilistic Nietzsche type atheistic theology that human beings can do, and they can create everything, and they can manipulate.
Wait, the
Okay, wait a minute.
Judeo-Christian
Pause it
concept of
again.
God is superior
Pause
in
it
many
again,
ways.
please. When I look at her, I've seen her be super articulate. We all have moments where we're not. I know I do. She looks like she's being forced to say something, right? Like she can barely remember the words to the script. So I think since she works for this group you were telling me about, maybe they've asked her to support a particular kind of ideology. And let's be honest, if you're an atheist, it's just down to your integrity whether or not you end up saying this sort of thing. But
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think that I can't agree with her. And not just because I'm an atheist, but because I'm fair. I'm fair. I have eyes, David Wood and Ayaan Hirsi Ali. I have eyes that tell me people have different ways of doing the same thing. and different ways of achieving the same goal. And sometimes that's okay. I shouldn't necessarily vilify people for doing that. If their path is destructive, I will vilify them. I absolutely will. If their path abuses people, I will vilify that. I'll call them on that. But also, I'm willing to say the paths I take should not. My path shouldn't vilify people either. My path shouldn't um, abuse people, make victims along my way. I shouldn't have that either. But that's integrity. I don't have a religion that tells me I need to be doing that. I don't subscribe to one. You know, I don't need one to know that. I had a household. I had a family. I saw injustices within my own household, and I knew I didn't like that. And as an adult, I still call people on those things when I see them. Right? Life is a pretty good teacher. You won't learn everything. No one does. But anyway, now I guess atheism is bad, and atheism has this theology with it. As far as I know, the theology for atheism could fit on this post-it note, and you won't need it all. You know, I'm unconvinced of God beliefs. That's what an atheist is.
Ways to atheism. Now, she specifically refers to a Nietzsche-type atheism where once you reject Christianity, you give up Christian morality, and therefore you need to replace Christian morality with something else. But here Nietzsche was just being way, way more realistic and commonsensical than lots of other atheists. German philosophers were better at understanding the implications of rejecting Christianity than British philosophers were. German philosophers said, if we're getting rid of God and Christianity, then everything that's been built upon a foundation of God and Christianity is about to come tumbling to the ground. So, we need a new morality with a new foundation. A few decades later, World War II. British philosophers, by contrast, said, we don't need God and Christianity to have our moral views.
Less than a century later, supersonic flight. Less than a century later, mobile phones. Less than a century later, what's that machine? Da Vinci surgery, right? Robots that can help a surgeon do surgery. Wow. Why would he leave those things out? Because they don't help his narrative. They don't help the way he's trying to color things. Go ahead.
He's just dangerous.
See how moral we are. We're walking proof that people don't need God and Christianity. What these super smart atheists weren't smart enough to grasp was that they were all raised in places that taught them Christian values. They didn't come up with anything.
I can't let him get away with that. I can't let him get away with that. As I had to explain to my very intelligent brother, you Christians didn't invent morality. You certainly haven't perfected it. People have been kind and generous and loving and sweet and helpful and self-sacrificing longer than there have been religions. The human race wouldn't have gotten till today without that. It's a simple fact. But David Wood, giving Christianity credit for almost everything good in the world, Ayaan Hirsi Ali is already doing that in that write-up that she did. Christianity is the best, baby. Look, you have your advantages, that's clear. But stop being super prideful and thinking that you got it better than everybody else. There's just a lot of you. It doesn't mean that you're better than everybody else. In fact, Christianity calls for humility. So can you truly say that Apostle Paul was the worst of sinners? Probably not. But if he was going around asking people to be killed because they want strict adherence to the Hebrew religion, yeah, that's unsavory behavior. But was he the worst? Isn't Hitler a worse Christian? Although Hitler hadn't been born yet. You know.
Absorbed their values from their culture. And their morality was like a rose that had been cut. Yes, it may be beautiful, but the beauty is going to fade because a cut rose dies. So I don't see how Ayaan's claim about the Christian concept of God being superior to a Nietzsche-type atheism wouldn't be true about atheism in general. But she says that the Judeo-Christian concept of the transcendent is also superior to something else.
And it's also superior, I would say, to the faith that I grew up in, with a God and a theology and a story that gives individuals a sort of one-dimensional purpose. Go and do this, make everyone a Muslim, and if they refuse, kill them, and then the day of judgment will come and life will be over. That's a simple story, but it's an abiding story. It's been around for 1400 years.
Better
And the
than
Hebrew story
Islam.
where you're supposed to
To
kill
be
people who don't
fair,
believe like you
Yeah,
do
I
and
mean,
try to convert you to their religion has been around longer. Again, this
it's
is
delusional.
it's I one of my favorite things that people say on the internet is do your research. I love that because people who often say that
Don't do
are like
research.
looking at they don't do research. I mean, when you say do my research, do you mean like go to like a library and read old books where they talk about this stuff and have figured it out hundreds of years ago and then read the modern take on that stuff? Or do you want me to go to ancient aliens and watch their videos and then I've done my research? Is that what you want me to do? Um, it's sort of like that. I think what David Wood is probably great at, and he's got a very satisfied look on his face, which is all right, is he's great at being a cheerleader for his side and not realizing that the other sides make good points too. He is probably doing something to shield his audience from making that same argument that I make. Don't try to think this is something that is common. It's unique to our group. It isn't. It's not unique to Christianity. It's not. But I guess in a way, it's like someone selling an inferior product and they got a showroom full of this inferior product. They know you can go across the mall to a better store or to a store similar to theirs that sells something better and it'll satisfy your needs. It'll last longer. It's more durable and maybe even prettier. But they don't sell those things and they want to stay in business. So they have to convince you, don't go somewhere else and get what we're selling. Get it from us. That blouse you like, get it from us. I know that down the mall, you can go to Macy's and get a prettier yellow blouse. But I've got a yellow blouse right here. Why would you put in all that time walking down there? Why would you pay a little more for something that'll last 3 times as long? Fashions change anyway. You might as well get what I have. I think that's what David Wood is doing, and I think that's what Miss Ali has begun to do with this. I don't sell atheism. I don't sell religion either, right? But I know atheism sort of gives me free reign to live life on my terms without judgment. Judgment's baked into a lot of religions. It's part of it.
Yeah, it's the whole point of it.
pretty much anything is better than Islam, isn't it?
The Judeo-Christian tradition,
Wow.
that it is not
Yeah, I
up
don't
to
think
the
that was a
human
fair
being to do
statement.
that.
I don't think that's a
But
fair
all
statement.
we can do is civilize and continue to civilize and question and check power. Power that is checked, that is the power that guarantees most people real freedom.
The
How do you check the
Judeo-Christian
Christian God?
tradition is
How
what
do you check him?
guarantees
How do
real
you check him?
freedom. Does this
If
sound
God
like the
said,
atheists from
can you
10
pause
years
it?
ago?
If the Christian God has decided he's going to have a tsunami to take out Phuket in Thailand, I think it's Thailand, Phuket, whatever it is, he's going to have a tsunami take it out. Can the people gather together and petition? You should only need 2 or more, according to Jesus. So, if 2 or more Christians say, you know what, God, we don't want you to wipe out Phuket, Phuket still gets wiped out. Well, how do we check God's power? right? The government in the United States, we have different levels of government, different offices in government, and the powers are supposed to keep a check on each other. You know, the executive branch, judicial branch, legislative branch, they check each other. Religion, where the Christian religion is that? Where? I'd be willing to say that it doesn't exist.
Nowhere.
It doesn't exist. So with what we can see is, and I'm going back to Gary Habermas. I love quoting or paraphrasing or quoting Gary Habermas when he said, as he debated Ken Humphreys, it is difficult for a man to live up to his own philosophy. Yes, Mr. Habermas. Yes. And what we're seeing here is Ms. Ali, have a difficult time with her own philosophy. But anyway, she'll keep reading.
Jordan
I suppose she'll get
Peterson
to that
goes
whole
on
Bible.
to ask about Ayaan's
Eventually.
journey from Islam.
So you, early in your life, relatively early in your life, you moved away from a totalizing religious view of the world.
Islam.
I don't exactly know into what you then moved, whether that was a secular humanism, but what I'm hearing from you now, and I believe this is also the case with your husband, is that you have come to a new understanding of the existence of the transcendent per se, and also of your relationship with it.
She moved away from the Islamic view of the transcendent to a rejection of the transcendent to a new understanding of the transcendent.
So I rebelled against a transcendent, a concept of God, of a God that now manifests itself in, the Iranian regime, Hamas, ISIS. That was the God I grew up with. That was the story that I grew up with. I rebelled against that.
She rebelled specifically against the Islamic concept of the transcendent.
But yeah, that's just straight Islamophobia. There's no way she should be representing the transcendent concept she had when she was a Muslim as being exclusively associated with terrorist groups.
And then when I was bold enough to say, and this was in the Netherlands, I don't want any of that. I didn't convert to Christianity. I didn't convert to another religion or another God.
Pay attention, because this is true of many ex-Muslims. Once they've witnessed the horrors of the God of Muhammad, they don't want another.
So yeah, Jordan Peterson has the thing with these multicolored suits. That's like his thing now. He's really into those.
God.
Well, he's a gazillionaire. He can afford that stuff.
Yeah, I think he has them custom made or something.
Idea, the three-letter word of God stands just for evil.
They move away from Islam, but when they hear the word God, all they think of is evil.
Wait, my Bible here. I can take you to the Old Testament and show you God being evil. I can take you right there to it. And it's not hard, and it's in multiple places. I can take you to Ezekiel 20, where he talks about he gave the disobedient Hebrews statutes that will horrify them, that they could not follow, right? Which even resulted in making their own babies pass through the fire. So child sacrifice. This is in the Bible. So when it got to Islam, if that God is just a bit more pissed off than the hiatus he took during Christianity, sounds like he's up to his old self again, right?
Right.
So I think Mr. Wood is expert at being completely unfair to Islam.
Oh yeah, and
atheists,
and he's this story is perfect for that, right? Her testimony fits right into his narrative, and this is what I mean. It's and this is the thing, is like, she knows better than this, but if not, the proof is in the pudding. As soon as she comes out as a Christian, all the Christo-fascists come out of the woodworks, and this is what I mean about why this is problematic, is she's giving fuel to their narrative. And we know that she's with them in terms of the Islamophobia. We know that she's with them in terms of the marginalization of historically excluded people, because she's all about the anti-woke. And yeah, so this to me is like it's a problem. And I'm gonna go ahead and say this too. First off, the new atheism thing is kind of BS. It's really just sort of the association of Hitchens and Dawkins and Sam Harris and there's a couple more, PZ Meyer and Daniel Dennett. But really, they were just atheists who didn't shut up about it. Nothing about atheism has changed. It's just that atheists had platform and actually, wanted to speak out against Christianity. But to the extent that she was associated with that, to me, what we're seeing here is that she never really represented that effort, because her moval into Christianity is just as uncritical as any typical believer's narrative. So the problem here is that they're going to continue to portray her as she was the hero of atheists and their critical thinking and all this type of stuff, but it's like, nah, really what we're seeing is she may have had her own reasons to reject Islam, and it seems like she's still acting out of her primary concern being who's going to help oppose Islam. But to me, she doesn't embody the critical thinking, the skepticism, and certainly not the compassion and the sort of humanism that a lot of us think is important. And it just shows you we don't all have the same values, and that atheism isn't a system of beliefs. It isn't an ideology, because if it was, we certainly disagree with her about what that ideology is.
And my best friends became Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins. These are people I still love and adore.
And they've all got some right-wing slant to them.
They performed one of the greatest social experiments in history.
I didn't hear what you said,
Bucket Locker. If you start to remove Christianity from...
She just said that Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins continue to be like amongst her best friends, and that she loves them. And I'm like, they all have conservative inclinations to them that a lot of people find problematic. Myself included. Sam Harris probably the least, but he's got problematic perspectives about trans people and things like that, and so they're not the best coaching staff, and they buy into this anti-woke stuff too. So
Western civilization. Their theory was that if you remove Christianity, you get an atheist utopia where science and reason reign supreme. How's that experiment working out for everyone?
And I think over time, I'm now 53. So when I was in this state of rebellion, it started for me when I was 32 years old. Over time, I've come to realize, and I wish Christopher was alive today to comment on what we're going through.
I wish Christopher Hitchens were here to see this too.
Oh my goodness.
I would love to hear his thoughts on the catastrophic failure of everything the new atheists promised. But what did Ayaan...
I don't know what they're going to say.
We were actually having a conversation about, in my view, the wrong conversation. Does God exist? It was the world built in 6 days. Do we believe in fairy tales? And that was the wrong conversation to have.
So, a conversation about whether various claims are true or false, this is the wrong conversation. What's the right conversation?
The right conversation to have, as I said earlier, was to compare what we as human beings, the transcendent that we have imagined and developed over centuries.
So the
Wait,
wrong conversation
this
imagine
is-
to
is...
compare the transcendence that we have imagined. Well, okay, that's comparing religion to religion. We do that right here on Hot Program. Imagined, right? Imagined. One could
Imagined.
compare the Christian God to gods from other faiths, right? What people have imagined. I think that's a good conversation to have. Yes, but you have to remember that that word imagined is in there. People have yet to demonstrate, right, on any level that I've been informed of, that a God actually exists. I'm talking the God with magical powers that can do anything. I'm not talking like a Marvel universe or DC cinematic universe God, not those guys, not some guy out of a comic book, but a being that can affect real change in the world, excuse me, that has divine powers, not just someone who's very dedicated to human rights, but someone
Yeah,
who can
and
walk up, like I say, when children, when believers say, what would convince you? Let me take Jesus Christ over to the children's hospital and have him heal all those kids. Let me take you. Let me take any person who believes in that religious doctrine that says they can lay hands on the sick and heal them. I will drive them there. I will buy them meals. I will fly them here. Let's just go do that. But
the okay.
why should I get? Well, the answer I get is why should God do that? What kind of God wouldn't? Because that's the kind of God you have.
Yeah, and she's getting this all messed up. First off, we evaluate those claims because they help us see that the narratives are false, and those narratives are core to the claims of these transcendent religions or whatever. The other thing is, if we're if we're going to compare it to or think of it in the context of what we've imagined for ourselves, we see where they fall short. So for instance, we've imagined for ourselves an egalitarian ethic, where we all treat each other equally. When we turn to these holy books, they're advocating for genocide and go take their land and kill all the men, women, and children, and sacrifices and all of this stuff. They're telling us that women are not equal to men. They're telling us that to be homosexual is an abomination. So she's continuing to act as though she's not aware that the particular brand of transcendence that she's chosen, namely Christianity, isn't producing these problems. So she wants to make it like, oh, if my main man Hitch was here today, he'd realize, debating Noah's Ark was silly. And it's like, yeah, he probably would realize that debating Noah's Ark was silly, but because he'd want to again be focused on pointing out the harm that religion does, as he was doing when he was alive.
Yeah. Well, he
So
might be focused on debating that Noah's Ark was silly because he's having a conversation with an adult,
right,
not a
not a
7-year-old
child.
child,
Yeah.
right? So wait a minute. I have to explain to you that the boat that these people were allegedly on isn't big enough to hold the food for the animals. So once I tell you that, you need to realize, okay, well, maybe I should look into that. When I tell you there's no geological evidence to support a worldwide flood, it should matter. But often when we're having these conversations with religious people, those things don't matter to them.
Right.
They can't believe it. They won't believe it. They have to shut their ears, stop their ears, and turn their head, But why? Why? The things that people often like most about their religion, I find they can still enjoy those things as a non-believer. Most of what a lot of people enjoy is people. The
Right.
people don't
Right.
go away unless
Right.
they're like a Jehovah's Witness shunning situation. I don't know if Mormons have that. Scientologists do. Like you'll have a suppressive person, you're supposed to.
I think every
Yeah.
religion has it. I think
Okay.
I think I think there's just some where it's explicit
Mm,
and some where it's I think there's a spectrum of explicit to sort of it
mm,
just happens as a way of tradition and custom. But I mean, look, even take most of the people in the chat or in the community who are former evangelical Christians. If you really get down to the deep of like, well, why haven't you talked to your family about this, or why don't you open up about this with your, your loved ones? A lot of times it's because they don't think that that person could handle the disappointment. In other words, when you get to the
mhm.
root of it, there's some sense of, I can't say this to certain people in my family because they'd just be so disappointed and it would affect our relationship and da 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 da. So I would say, are you really confident you want to say that group doesn't have a form of excommunication or dissociation when you're literally afraid to tell them that you don't believe? I mean, like, I think that's the proof is in the pudding. So yeah, I think there's just you sort of a range of ways that works out. And I will admit that part of that spectrum is where it's not really a dissociation. It's just they just look at you differently or whatever. But all of it, I think, is a range of social consequences that people are concerned about.
I guess I could be, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, some are explicit, like they'll send you a letter or whatever. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
Derek from Mythvision talking about people coming to his house. They showed up at his house. Hey, we want you to,
Yeah, I mean, they pull up.
they
That's
wanted him to quit
wild.
his job, or maybe his wife to quit his job. I forget. He can explain it better than I can, but they showed up at his house, and I thought, dang, agents of Christianity.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. Like those guys
Are
from the
these
Matrix.
claims that are part of the Judeo-Christian tradition true? The right conversation is, how does the concept or the story of the transcendent that has developed in the Judeo-Christian tradition match up against other concepts or other stories? And here it sounds like she's thinking in purely practical, pragmatic terms. What does this view lead to? What does that view lead to? So which view is better? Now, I think we can have both conversations. I think we can discuss whether various claims are true while also discussing what these claims lead to. And having both conversations leads to a further conversation, namely, how does our realization that a certain story produces far better results affect our view of whether that story is true? But let's see where Ayaan is going with this.
And so now I can say I am proudly of a Judeo-Christian religion.
Ayaan Hirsi Ali, an ex-Muslim who has spent many years as a devout atheist, now identifies as a
So
member of
so
the...
so does David Wood believe in Santa Claus still? Because it's really useful. It leads to a really useful place if people are concerned about whether they're on the naughty or nice list. And I mean, the story of he sees you when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, he knows when you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. I mean, see this
It's
is,
you can equate that with the God of the Bible.
but that's what I'm saying is like this
Hmm.
is the only thing they want to reason about that way. Where they want to and Christians in our lives will do this too. If you really start to ask them about, is this faith true? Should they believe it? Da 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 da. All of a sudden, they'll be quick to bring up all sorts of other considerations that matter. And it's very hard to get people to focus. No, I'm pretty sure, this. So all I'm getting at is I think this is a distraction when somebody says to you, oh, let's talk about what an idea leads to. Let's talk about, no, you first establish the truth of a thing, and then we can talk about the consequences of it. And again, if you want to have that conversation, let's go ahead and have that conversation, because Christians are just not prepared for what we have to say. I don't care. I would not care if a story led to better outcomes if it was not true. That is not a good reason to believe it. So we could just shut this conversation down right now. No matter how, because it's just not. We always want to hope and reserve our ability to work towards something that's true.
If the story, well, Jesus, let's go to Jesus in the Bible. That's David Wood's jam. Jesus told parables. Jesus told more than a single parable. Wouldn't it be better just to have a parable that had everything, that was like a pizza with the works? It has everything baked into it, the perfect crust, the perfect cheese, all the right vegetables, all the right meats, and so on, right? It would be better to have one parable, and then everybody could understand that parable. And that parable could be very brief. It could cover all topics. It fixes everything.
Right.
It doesn't exist, as far as I know. It certainly doesn't exist in the Bible. There are many parables in the Bible because those parables address different problems. Buddhism will give you stories that are very effective in helping you learn to accept what's going on or how you might adapt or change your behavior. No doubt Islam does the same. No doubt Hinduism does the same. No doubt Scientology probably has that equivalent as well, right?
Right.
Because these are fundamental tools for human behavior modification. So again, it's David Wood waving the flag saying Christianity is the best. It's the best. They didn't invent a good story. They didn't. Somebody else came long before that, probably before there was writing, and invented, hey, here's how you tell a good story.
Yep.
Just, again, salesmen.
The
Don't buy the yellow
Judeo-Christian
blouse somewhere else.
religion.
Without having to waste your time about, do I really think that the world was built in 6 days? Do I really believe every word in the Bible? No. But I do believe that that's Judeo-Christian tradition, and what it has brought forth is...
And again, pause the tape. Christians, you're telling on yourselves again.
Yeah, she doesn't believe every word of the Bible. But hey, Scripture's God breathed. What do you mean you don't believe it all?
Yes.
Heretic.
Exactly. But it's like, what's the conversation we're having? Because if it's the conversation in the church, if they're talking to you, most people of faith, of this faith in particular, are going to say you've got to believe the Bible. That's essential to being a Christian. But when it comes to tallying up who's a Christian versus who's not, and we want the ringing endorsement of a celebrity adherent, all of a sudden we could just blow right through them saying that they don't believe every word in the Bible, because it's they want to. It's about who's on side.
Values that I aspire to, the values by which I live.
So, without believing that certain propositions within the Judeo-Christian tradition are true, she nevertheless realizes that she's part of the tradition and that she wants to be part of the tradition. Not exactly someone Christians would recognize as a fellow follower of Jesus Christ, but in a way she is. In a way she is following Jesus. And we can at least appreciate the change in such a short amount of time from Christianity is terrible for the world and needs to be replaced by atheism to pump your brakes, everyone. Turns out we may need Christianity way more than we thought.
Okay, pause it.
A Christian by Roger
I want to thank David Wood. I have long used the expression that some Christians just want to wear the jersey and show up on Sunday. They never want to play the game.
Right.
he used the word follow. Now that has come to mean something in our modern times with things like Instagram and Twitter.
Mm.
So maybe it is fair to say that at the time that Jesus would have lived, if he truly existed, following Jesus meant to physically leave where you were, go to where he was, and do what he was doing or support him in that mission. After he went up to heaven, then it was following the apostles and doing that. I think modern Christianity is more comfortable with the Instagram style of
Yes,
following.
yes,
Let me
yes.
see what Jesus posted today and look at cat memes and then go
Yeah,
about my business. Forget the
right.
living the example part. Forget the seeking and saving the lost. I just want to check out what he said today. Or I'll comment on that. Let me leave a comment. Or wait, I'm just going to leave a like. I'm not going to
Yes.
do it.
Yes.
I'm just going to leave a like. And then I'll move on to more cat videos. Maybe there's a sexy car somewhere in the feed as you scroll. Or for me, Miley Cyrus is really the journey that matters that you remember anyway, or whatever she said. I love those things. But yeah, maybe that's more appropriate. And Miss Ali should try to look at it that way. Is that where she has found herself to where Jesus made some very interesting posts in his ministry, and she has liked quite a few of them. So she's decided to click on him and follow. But as far as literally doing the assignment, she's not up for that. She's not going to do that. She's not going to the meetup, so to speak, when
Yeah.
he's in her area.
Yeah, Iron Chariot here. I'm with you. You know, there of course there are Christians that are educated in the sense of having formal education in whatever. Um, but it's hard. I don't believe they're Christians for educated reasons, especially when we look at that as like a relative proposition, meaning an educated reason for anything is one that is well informed.
Mhm.
Uh, and I don't think people become Christians for well-informed reasons. It's sort of like when they had the conversation about can you be a scientist and be a Christian? Yeah, you can technically be a scientist and be a Christian. What you can't do is be a Christian for scientific reasons, right? And so whatever you're doing with however you became a Christian, it isn't because of the scientific evidence. That's not the case. And this is like a broader version of that question, right? Because you could say it's more than just science, it's philosophy and history and whatever else it is. But yeah, this is something that and I think it sort of sounds like a hot take, but I think it's really what's happening in the world. And um Ayaan herself, I think, represents the fluidity at the boundary. Like I think most people are becoming more and more educated, and we see this trend that as people become more and more educated, they become less and less religious. But that's a population level trend, not necessarily predictive of any individual. And so I think she represents a person who's formally educated but
Mhm.
has all of this other stuff going on to her that is very pressing to her, wanting to oppose Islam, wanting to get rid of the woke, all this type of stuff. And so she's demonstrated that fluidity now where she's gone back and forth trying to find the ideology that best suits her. But again, none of us, I don't think, have heard an educated reason and all this to become a Christian.
I have yet to find that in what she's saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but maybe again, David would pick the clips.
That's true. That's
So,
true. Yeah.
but I would think he
Keep that
would
in
pick one
mind.
that did that, though. I would think he would
Yeah,
do that.
facts. Facts. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, great point. Great point.
Putin in 2008, and I said, Roger, no, I'm not a Christian. And he said, but you act like a Christian, and you behave like a Christian, therefore you are a Christian.
Oh my
She was living
goodness.
like a Christian even when she despised Christianity.
I'm
But
living like
yeah,
a Christian.
I'm just gonna I'm just gonna call BS on that. I'm just
Except
gonna
for the
call
God part.
BS on
Take
that.
you take the God part out of it. I'm living like a Christian.
Yeah, what a bunch of BS. Because exactly, so many of us could say that, and we know they would reject us and reject us and reject us again.
Yeah,
Because at the
definitely.
end of the day, matter of fact, this is the story I tell y'all. Like, I was active in a church playing on the worship team as an atheist, and you know, being rejected by girls in that church and being able to talk to them and be like, I go to your church more than you do. And so living like a Christian doesn't matter. You have to believe the claims. I'm talking about churches that they won't let you become a member of the church. Even if you serve the church, you cannot join the church because you have to believe these claims. So this is really dishonest, but it is sort of what Christians do. In the sale, this is the sales pitch portion, right? And in the sales pitch portion, we paper over all that because we want as big of a net as possible. But then we're gonna tighten this thing once we get people in the fold and let them know. Oh no, but you think you could just live the lifestyle? That's a doctrine of works. No, you need to understand faith, the doctrine of faith. Yeah, I mean it's crazy.
And I think that's exactly what I would like to say to Richard Dawkins. It's, you act like, I've been to, choral music with him, which he enjoys very much. And he's one of the most Christian people I know.
Richard Dawkins is one of the most Christian people
boy.
Ayaan knows. What does she mean by this? Dawkins doesn't even believe in God. What does she mean? She means that Dawkins has been massively influenced by Christianity and that he's living according to Christian values.
Time for a personal story. I moved to the Antelope Valley just over 7.5 years ago. I was living in Studio City. I was an atheist there. I wanted to find an atheist group to go to some sort of meetup up here. So I go online and I look, and I evidently looked at the exact wrong thing. They were like these two things next to each other. One for a local atheist group, and one was an advertisement for a discussion at a church about some Morgan Freeman series where he was talking about God. I wrote down the address and time, not for the atheist meetup, but for the meetup at one of the local Methodist churches to discuss this Morgan Freeman thing. I'm all for it. I didn't know that. I just thought the atheist group was doing the Morgan Freeman thing. So off I go. I show up. I get a good parking space. I walk in, and I was the youngest person in the room. It was led, I was surprised it was as a church because I still think I'm going to the atheist thing. And I sat down and we started talking. I said, oh, I meant to go to another presentation, but I'm here. And I said to them, I'm an atheist. And they all looked at me in my opinion, they all looked instantaneously more interested in anything I had to say after that point. Well, we discussed this program that they're talking about. I think I might have seen one episode of it, so I hadn't seen the whole series. And it was a really great time, but they had a lot of questions about me as an atheist. And one of them, leaning back in his chair, very interested, legs crossed, said, well, it sounds like you're a Christian. And I smiled and I laughed. I said, Christianity didn't invent morality. It didn't invent generosity. It didn't invent charity. It didn't invent self-sacrifice. The things I've noted earlier, right? It didn't invent those things.
Or perfect them.
Certainly not. However, we simply have those things in common. That's wonderful. In no way is that bad. Those actions go to making individual lives better. And the more often they are performed, often they make them even better and better and better and better. So I think we need to understand when we're having those conversations with Christians, they may be under the false impression that Christianity led the way.
Yep.
And I think there's certainly gentle ways of breaking it to them. I wasn't a jerk about it. I simply and the Methodist minister, he couldn't disagree with me. And all those people, how many people are they going to have a conversation with? Like, oh, we had an atheist come and he was a real nice guy, and we had this level-headed discussion, and there was no anger, there was no shouting back and forth. It was just so peaceful and fun. And they said, hey, if you ever like to come back, come on back. And I said, well, I might. Wouldn't rule it out. So I think we just need to keep in mind we can stand our ground on our principles, right? It's not that we can't learn something from people who are religious. We can, and we do. But it's also not saying that we can't present something to them, enhance what they know a little more, teach them something new. And lately, my fiance, she'll see me with my phone in my hands and I'm typing something. What are you doing? And I'll say, someone is wrong on the internet. And I'm correcting them. And she knows it's a discussion about religion. She knows there's some Christian on Facebook that has misstated something, and I'm providing context and correction to them. You're not trying to change their minds. Like, no, not really. I'm just sort of explaining things, letting them know that they haven't got the Smurfy touch with their religion, where it all becomes better because it's Christian. That it's better because it is Christian already. I'm explaining holes in their reasoning, holes in their logic in the scriptures they forgot. No man has seen God, the Gospel of John tells us. However, there's a story in the Old Testament with Moses almost being killed by God in front of his wife and child. So which is true?
Yeah. All right. Well, give us your concluding thoughts, then we'll get wrapped up here.
I think it'll be fantastic to see. I think I might need to devote some more attention to Mrs. Ali's journey here into Christianity, and maybe even tweet her saying, "Hey, we spoke about you today on our podcast, and maybe I should put that sweet loving arms of atheism in a tweet to her. We'll welcome you back.
Right. Yeah.
Once you've read the entire
Right.
Bible all the way through."
Yeah.
Hey, there's always Buddhism. I don't know anybody that's ever been upset with a Buddhist.
And that's a gentle correction for me right there, is just ask them if they've read the entire book, and if not, tell them, I really think you should.
Keep your receipt. Keep that receipt for that Bible.
Oh my goodness, it's funny. All right, gang. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Yes, thank you.
Please do like the video, subscribe to our channels if you're not already. There are links in the description to both of our channels and the Hot Program channel.
Yes.
Share the video, and appreciate all you guys. Thank you so much for coming through.
Yes,
And we'll see you next time. Be good to yourselves
and each other.
All right, gang.